All right, so the finance minister has finished presenting the budget. You know, when he started off, he was going at such a gallop. He thought the whole budget speech would be over in just about 45 minutes or maybe an hour. Then lots and lots and lots of small details came inside. And at the end of the day, it was what, more than nearly about 2 hours, 15 minutes with that 5-minute strategic timeout or break in the middle. So we have in this room just about the entire who's who of India Inc. who are watching the budget with us. So I'm going to get a first quick snap reaction from everybody, and then we're going to start diving into the basic details. So some of the big steps were announced early on. Then lots of places where the money was being spent, lots of schemes, 100 crore rupees for many of them. And then the tax proposals, hikes in exemption, of course, so perhaps the big things, PPF, savings, all of that has gone up. Basic income tax exemption has gone up also. Let me start getting a quick reaction from everybody. So Sinha, you're sitting right next to me, so I'm going to start with you.
Sure, thanks a lot, Vikram. No, I think the budget was, you know, when you take out all the announcements about schemes and so on, which took almost an hour actually, at a macro level, I think it's a fairly prudent budget. He's hewed to the 4.1% targets and for fiscal deficit, and he's already also laid out the target for the next 2 years, taking it down to 3% 2 years from now. In addition to that, I think he has made a fair number of announcements across different sectors, and I think those are fairly positive in some cases. I think
too much micro, you think? I mean,
yeah, but you know, I think just
this ended up sounding a bit like the UPA budgets, which perhaps there was an expectation it's going to be a completely different sound and feel. It's not that there weren't big steps, and we will discuss them, but I'm saying the overall feel of the budget was very similar to the budgets of the past.
No, I agree, Vikram, but take out that aspect of it. I think if you just take that out and you look at the hikes in defense FDI, insurance FDI, he's made a lot of announcements about infrastructure, encouragement, the announcement about REITs, you know, Mukesh, and I'm sure the tax people will talk about the tax benefits. You know, for the renewable energy sector, he's hiked the cess on coal. So I think there's a lot of little things there that are actually fairly positive.
Okay, let me get quick reactions from everybody.
Mr. Munjal has to leave a quick reaction from him. Happy, disappointed.
Lots of small concerns have been addressed, but the big bang which was expected was not quite clear. Okay. And I also wish there was more focus on how some of these things would get done. But clearly, they've addressed many, many concerns which have been raised by different sectors of the economy, social sector, agriculture. Clearly, a very, very wide-ranging set of issues have been addressed here.
Mr. Munjal, if I could just ask you, of the steps that are announced so far, which were the biggest bang of them all? The things which he said to modify the way the tax regime is administered, was that big? The hikes in FDI?
I think one is an attitudinal comment he made on 2 or 3 things. He made that on infrastructure, on tax. He talked about resolving tax disputes. I thought these were very good, attitudinally. Also about the SEZs, etc. I also think it's a good idea for the government to talk about setting up to widen and deepen the debt markets in India. This has been a big concern in India for a very long time. Also, talking about addressing subsidies, I think was good, but it was not clear what they're going to do about this. He's retained the numbers, which is a bit surprising, of collection, revenues, deficit, which were already announced. It is a bit surprising, and it's a tough ask right now. So good luck.
Especially after 22,000 in direct tax giveaways, so it's not quite clear how he's
so I'm not quite clear from where it's going to make up, because he did not talk of any numbers of divestments, which we had expected would probably make up the balance. And
we'll have to read the fine print.
I think the fine print needs to be read to understand this in more detail.
Yeah. So disappointments on the specifics being lacking in terms of how he intends to cut subsidies. That a quick rating on a scale of 1 to 10.
No rating. I'm afraid the rating is not a good idea.
Mr. Tarandas.
Vikram, before he started speaking, you asked me about the priority, and I talked about the fisc, and this is what you also talked about. And I think he's focused on that, because bringing the fisc down will help us to deal with the inflation, will help us to deal with the interest rates, and will bring back investment and growth. So we are on that path. Second point is, I think the management capability of this leadership the finance minister, and of course the prime minister is strong. So I have confidence in implementation.
Yeah, that at the end of the day is the key.
That's the
Implementation.
key.
You can keep announcing things. Actually, the budget should not be as big as we make it out to be. It's all about how it's implemented. But
absolutely,
I guess we look at it for some signals. So Bhargav?
I agree with this, that the major thing will always be implementation. We can announce various things, but they don't get implemented. But here he has made good announcements in the sense that the fiscal deficit, CAD, is kept under control. He's talked of reviewing the expenditure to that expenditure commission. Now, I assume that is a way in which they will cut down on subsidies, because a lot of wasteful subsidies would get covered by this expenditure commission. And I think that's one of the ways in which he is going to get the fiscal deficit to the levels you're looking for. He's, of course, talked of the retrospective taxes, and that I think he's made clear that there will not be retrospective taxes, and this commission...
Did he go enough on that? There were some people hoping that he would just say, we will...
No, I don't think that would be the right way to do it either, but I think having a committee of the CBDT high-level committee going into it and then making recommendations.
We'll get the tax experts to talk about that in greater length, but Mr. Reddy, let me get you in. So infrastructure companies have obviously been really under the cosh for many years right now, for a variety of reasons. There was a hope that this government and this budget will start kick-starting the revival of the cycle. Do you see that happening?
I think so. There was a lot on infrastructure that was spoken about, whether it's roads, NHA, 37,000 crores, 8,000 kilometers, whether about ports, 16 ports. They emphasized that tier 1, tier 2 cities for airports. Power, I didn't hear too much. But in particular, I was very happy about bond financing, tax exemptions. They were talking about infrastructure investment trusts, which is very much required for financing of infrastructure projects and, recycling equity. So I think there's been enough emphasis. But infrastructure is so complex, I don't think a budget can handle it. Even 1023, ATI 1023G, tax exemption has been taken till 2017. So I think there's been enough, but infrastructure is a matter of detail. So I hope, we've already seen in the last 1 month of the government that there's a lot of action on the ground. And I'm sure they'll continue to see action on the ground.
At the end of the day, is that the thing which is really important for you?
Absolutely.
The actual implementation,
that's exactly
the clearance
the point.
of projects,
yes,
what's happening on it.
It's in the nitty-gritty that's important. The government intention is very clear. The emphasis is clear. I'm very confident that they will continue on their promise.
Okay. I'm going to go to the other tables now one by one, but Mr. Banerjee.
Lots on healthcare, clearly.
Well, we still didn't get a macro picture on the total financing of healthcare, but there are very good measures that they have announced, like the free drug and free diagnostic services, and also the setting up of 4 more AIIMS and 12 more medical colleges, sorely needed. And the fact that he made a commitment that every state would have an AIIMS-like a facility is a huge thing for universal accessibility. I think so. Overall, a lot was said about the expansion of services to include people in the rural area also.
And even insurance impacts healthcare.
But that we'll see how they pass it to the customer.
Okay,
all right, Shweta, Mr. Banerjee is here with us, so let me just get him in. Now, we saw the markets. They were down very sharply, and now suddenly the Sensex seems to have recovered. Your take on it? Too much diving into fine print? I mean, some people felt that there were too many schemes being announced and it slowed down a bit, the speech.
Well, I think, it was a 2-hour plus speech, so that was marathon. But what we really noticed is this phenomenal coverage. I think he touched upon every sector. He touched upon every area that we wanted him to touch upon. So the intent is very clear. The roadmap is clear. We need to see the fine prints in certain areas, which of course he didn't go into details. But I think the industry feedback is definitely that it is a progressive budget. It's also touched upon areas like taxation in detail the way we wanted. And he has talked about actually widening the tax net, bringing in a lot of reforms in the tax structures. And so it's been very, very progressive. And also in the reforms.
But was it big bang enough?
See,
or were you not expecting a big bang budget?
Not big bang in terms of just announcements, but I think if you really look into the nitty-gritties, they are very, very good. Even in terms of the customs part where he is addressed, I think all in line with the recommendations what you wanted. And also in the reform side, I think you really look at the FDI side and all of that. So he is very carefully looked into as to where would growth come from. Investment pipeline flowing once again. And third, which is very important, I think he has been able to also look at how he will get finances, how he will finance his budget. I think he's looked into that very carefully.
Okay. Shweta, you have one question there, then I want to go across to Sachin.
Quick reaction from Shobna of Apollo.
3 points. One is that I think that maturity of a 30-day government was huge because they went into details, and it's a series of small things that will culminate in big bang efforts, and I'm very hopeful. One of that is in my own sector, the insurance, FDI. It'll create more FDI, will create more insurance and more access. We're seeing that everywhere. And my third point as belonging to the state of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, he's really gone into that state. So it looks like it's going to be happening, and we expect big things to be happening. And I think that will result in, specific things when he's announcing in states. It's going to be there for other states and the whole country as such. Good budget.
Right. Sumit, before I come to you, Sachin Pilot now joining us from the Congress party. Sachin, what was your take on that budget?
I think the finance minister and the BJP government have somehow actually fallen victim of their own propaganda, because the kinds of expectations they had raised during the election campaign and post that, it was impossible almost for any finance minister to really live up to the expectations that had generated this kind of euphoria for the BJP in the poll results. I mean, the pushing away of the tough decisions on subsidies, etc., to expenditure management committee, etc. And I saw so many announcements of so many committees and commissions. It seemed like the tough decisions have been put in the in the court of a group of people who will then recommend, and the government will say yes or no. I'm also not very clear about how he's tackled inflation and price rise in his budget speech. The government today has to face an immediate task of a almost failing monsoon in some parts, and really runaway inflation on food price that has risen tremendously. I think no effective immediate steps. Yes, long-term strategic planning, announcements, etc. have come forward. The smart city concept, it sounds very good when you talk about it, but what are the details of it? 7,000 crores will go where? What are these smart cities going to be? Where are they going to be located? How will they be funded? Who is going to house them? I mean, these are all details which were missing in the 2.5 hour long almost speech. And also, I thought some of the things that the government has brought out today are a bit controversial. The river linking one project that they've kind of announced, and then spending 200 odd crores on one memorial, etc. These are all symbolic gestures that I think the Prime Minister must have forced the Finance Minister to come out with, but may not find traction in the long run. So overall, I think this budget speech is really indicative of what the government wants to do, but perhaps not fulfilling the kind of really high expectations that the BJP had brought upon themselves during the election campaign.
All right, Sachin, fair point, but can I just tell you, while the speech was on, and especially when a large range of schemes was being announced, a lot of people who were sitting, I mean, you can see this hall, everyone was sitting and watching this, the budget speech together. Many of them said this sounds like a UPA budget. I don't know if you would take that as a compliment or an insult.
Well, I would take it as neither, because this is not a UPA budget. The finance minister has his first budget speech. I think he tried to do a good job. But let's not forget, the economy is facing a challenging time for many reasons. And the same reasons were the ones that the BJP was criticizing our government. International crude prices, he mentioned Iraq, high food inflation, he mentions warehouse deficiencies. I mean, we know the problems, and we were criticized, we were actually voted out, if you take that theory, on that same reason. But I didn't find enough conclusive, effective, tangible steps today. It's fine to say we'll set up a 100 crore fund, we'll set up a 200 crore fund, we'll set up this mission, that committee. But today, tonight, people want, this India's aspirational, and he said it. But what is he doing tonight to, give in to those aspirations, say this is effectively what we'll do on the ground? It's okay to make budgetary allocations. There have been going on for years. But I think time will tell how effective the speech is going to be. One last point I want to make is about the CSR. They mentioned about slum development as being a part of CSR. I think that may prove to be controversial, because you can do drinking water facility, rehabilitation, poor, SC, ST, OBC, but slums are very politically tricky, and I think they're also having a look at Mumbai, because Maharashtra goes to poll in a few months' time. Slum development and rehabilitation and being that part of CSR might create problems in the end, and I think the government has to be really careful before they actually go and execute that aspect of CSR.
All right, Sambit sitting out there. Sambit, calling it a UPA budget, would you treat that as an insult or a compliment?
As an insult, definitely.
I thought so. I thought you'd say that.
I mean, I would call it a 3P budget. He, in fact, talked of, Mr. Arun Jaitley talked of the 3P India. I would call it a 3P budget. It is prudent. It is progressive planning for the India ahead. So I believe it's one of the best budgets that a government could prepare within 3 days. It has every hue and color for each section. It addresses the social concerns also. It addresses the industry as well as the middleman. I mean, in the sense the middle class as well. So I believe everyone has something in this budget. And as far as Sachinji was concerned, he was saying that we are the ones who have done nothing for the inflation. Let me remind him of the fact inflation was there for them, and we had promised in our in our manifesto about a price stabilization fund. And today, thankfully, Mr. Arun Jaitley has talked of the price stabilization fund. We have established it. And this budget, I believe, at the end of the day, is a budget which addresses the concern of the agricultural sector to a large extent, to the entrepreneurs to a large extent. So I believe it's a budget which is complete in itself.
Okay, I'm going to come back to the political side, and I want to then dive into tax. We're being also joined by, we have, BMR, KPMG, PwC, all are here. We're going to get sense from them on that. But first, if I can continue to get quick snap reactions from you.
Well, I think a bit of a disappointment on two accounts. Firstly, there doesn't seem to be any clarity or measures in respect of reviving the many projects, 200 plus projects, which are stalled currently, both in private sector and public sector. There's no clarity, funding, etc., what is going to happen. And secondly, too many small initiatives and schemes announced, which seem to be getting the whole government out of focus. Maybe they had too many constituencies to please. So in a way, it's a populist budget to give...
You are calling this a populist budget?
In respect of schemes, announcement of schemes. Okay. Most certainly. Every region, every sector, everybody has got a small 50 crores, 100 crores. Where is the focus? Where is the big ticket aspect beyond infrastructure and investment allowance? I must say, two very positive initiatives in addition to tax reforms.
All right, Shweta, you want to get the markets, sense of the markets, but do you agree with what he said, Mr. Gurchandas? Or?
Well, I think the problem we are all seeing here is really that he had an opportunity to present a visionary budget, a roadmap for this government over the next 5 years. That's what people were expecting. And he did not do that. And the fact is he had 3 jobs to do. One was to revive growth and create jobs. 2 was to control inflation. And 3 was to be fiscally responsible. Well, I'll give him A marks on being fiscally responsible, but we have to see those numbers to really know whether he is fiscally responsible. I mean, I missed the fact of any disinvestments. Those are going to help him to balance the budget, and we didn't see privatization. So that was obviously disappointing. And I would say as far as controlling inflation, he could have provided much more. There were things there. I mean, he says market sales, we will do that. In fact, fiscal responsibility itself is deflationary. But at the end of the day, he lost an opportunity to say how it would be done. But having said that, if you ask me, the best things in this budget were REITs, the fact that infrastructure, that will give a boost to real estate and infrastructure. Right. That was a big deal. I think 100% e-commerce FDI is a much bigger deal than we all realize.
Okay. Fair enough. Shweta, interestingly, the markets, which were almost down 400 points, the Sensex, look what's happening right now.
Right, absolutely. Look at the Sensex and how smartly it has shot up over the last half an hour or so. In fact, it was slipping in and out of red territory before the speech. During the speech, we in fact saw the markets tank quite a lot. The Sensex was down. And look at the smart recovery we've seen in the last half an hour or so, which clearly means that after the fine print is being read, investors are digesting the news. They now believe that it is a budget that the markets really wanted, even though most of the announcements, whether it's FDI and defense insurance, were factored in by the markets. But now the sense that one is getting, at least from Dalal Street, is that yes, it's a budget that has impressed investors. It's a budget that has impressed Dalal Street. We'll try to put up some of the top gainers and the sectors that are gaining, but look at the Nifty there, 1.5% up on the Nifty as well, 110 points in the green. We'll talk about specific sectors that have clearly got a boost, but big financial services, insurance, healthcare, infrastructure, real estate, talking about the real estate investment trust. Now, those are sectors that are clearly buzzing right now because of those changes that have taken place. So the Sensex now up 375 points, and look at the way it's climbing as the fine print is being digested. Vikram.
All right, Venu, I'm going to come to all the tax things, but I mean, the Sensex suddenly bouncing back. What to your mind would be really encouraging the markets? And what did you make of the budget?
See, I think the Sensex is bouncing back because a lot of companies which have weight in the Sensex feel they'll benefit from some of the customs duty protection that he's offering to domestic industry, as well as real estate, the rights, and also the general promise that infrastructure piece will be fixed. But I'm coming back to what you suggested initially, that it sounds more like UPA, especially in regard to two numbers. He's retained the fiscal deficit number of UPA. He's also retained the tax revenue growth number of UPA, which was earlier criticized as very, very ambitious. And also, Arun Jaitley had earlier, BJP had said that this government had fudged the fiscal deficit figures for 2013-14, but they have retained that number too. They're not talking about any fudging now. So I think it's encouraging because the two are on the same page on this.
Okay, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw joining us. Kiran, your take on this? At least from what you were tweeting, you didn't sound terribly impressed.
Well, you know, I would say that expectations were riding high and, you know, the initial response of the market was not very positive. Having said that, I would say, yes, okay, this budget basically has nothing negative or adverse. There are some good positives, largely very positive and directional in its intent. But I still am a bit disappointed because it still sounds very aspirational. I was expecting to see, you know, some tangible kind of statements coming out of the finance minister. And, you know, yes, couple of good things, but nothing new, nothing novel. You know, I was expecting this government to really come up with some bold reforms, but obviously, well, the scriptwriter belongs to the old mindset, so I guess they're very cautious. But I thought at least Arun Jaitley would have kind of pressurized the scriptwriter to have been a little bolder in what he stated. But having said that, I think we should build on this. And you know, personally, I've always felt that we give too much importance to once a year budget statements, but we need to now build on the direction set by this budget, which I think is good. You know, the tax intent, the sort of the statements made on you know, finally implementation of GST, but even there I would have liked to have seen a proper timeline. You know, if Arun Jaitley had said, I want GST to be implemented by the 1st of April 2015, I think that would have been a more positive statement to have come from him.
All right.
I'm disappointed to see that nothing happened to our sector because there's, you know, apart from the universal healthcare message, I didn't see too much in the area of, you know, healthcare or pharma manufacturing and things like that.